Looks like this journey went off the rails. We're sitting next to something that's usually up on a shelf here, but for a month in 1901, it's the centre of a sensational murder trial at the Old Bailey in London. So this is a model of carriage 269, London South Western Railway. It's a third-class smoking compartment, and if you can imagine, it's been taken like a slice out of the middle of a carriage as the model's built. It's sort of 1/6 scale, so it's Barbie or Action Man scale, depending on your preference. In January 1901, Mrs. Rhoda King, the wife of a printer from Southampton, boards the train from Southampton to London. A little later, at Eastleigh, a fairly nervous young man, George Parker, joins the train and sits in the same carriage. And then at Winchester, the next stop, William Pearson, an elderly gentleman farmer, also joins the train. The three don't really interact. William Pearson reads a newspaper and falls asleep. Rhoda King looks out the window at the scenery passing by, and George Parker sort of nervously takes himself off to the toilet. Then, just as the train's going through Surbiton, he returns from the toilet and shoots William Pearson almost point blank in the face. Rhoda King, who's looking out of the window at the time, doesn't immediately realise what's happened. She says, "I heard two loud bangs, one after the other. I thought initially it was a fog signal, and then I realised that I was injured and my face was covered with blood. In fact, she's been grazed by the discharge of the gun, and her face is splashed with William Pearson and her own blood." Completely shocked, she turns to Parker and says, "My God, what have you done? Why did you do it?" To which the young man points the gun at her and says, "I did it for money. I need money. Do you have any?" A sort of tense standoff follows, where King begs for her life and Parker ultimately decides that he's not going to kill her. She talks him first into covering Pearson's face with a handkerchief, and then throwing both the gun and his extra bullets out of the window, where they're later found by a trackside worker and handed in to the police. Throughout the entire trip from Surbiton to Vauxhall, King is trapped in this tiny compartment with this nervous murderer and what she describes as the dead body, where she can hear the gurgling from the dead man's throat the whole way. There's no corridor in this coach, which was fairly standard in 19th century carriages. You know, the idea of that you see in old movies of the compartments with a corridor running down one side of the carriage was sort of a later development. They're only really coming into service around this time. So people would get into this type of compartment carriage, and then you were stuck with whoever you had joined at the station or got on at later stations until the next stop. And there are no stops between Surbiton and Vauxhall, so King is stuck. By the time the train pulls into Vauxhall, Parker has decided he's going to make a run for it the minute the carriage doors open. King springs up from a seat after him, screams that he's a murderer, and he's tackled by station police on the platform and chased into the nearby gasworks, where he's run down and arrested. It's quite a complicated case, actually, despite there being a key witness, King, who then stands as the main witness in the trial. Parker's motives are very unclear. We still don't really know, even though we have the whole trial transcript and exhaustive newspaper coverage of the event. Initially, he writes a letter to William Pearson's widow in which he claims that he did it for money. This story comes out in the trial about how he was sort of in love with a married woman and he possibly wanted the money to run away with her, or possibly he bought the gun thinking that he might end up in some sort of murder-suicide pact with this woman. But then arresting officers who sort of take him into custody at the station tell another story. He rambles on about how Pearson had had some sort of contact with him during his army days and had done him some sort of past wrong. There's never any connection established between the two men. But he rambles on about this while in custody, and then also is overheard, one of the police officers says at the trial, saying, "I wish I'd killed her, then I would have got away with it. I wish I'd shot the old cow." This ultimately seals Parker's fate, and he is hung in March 1901 in Wandsworth Prison. Jacket off, gloves on, let's get to the murder scene. So, this model is pretty much accurate. And it's made by the apprentices at Eastleigh Works. We know that because in the trial, the sort of head draftsman, William Henry Buckley, stands up and says, "I'm the head draftsman and I've commissioned my apprentices to make this for the trial." And it's a really unusual railway model. You wouldn't make a section of a carriage, really. That's not something that you'd normally do, either for recreational models or a professional sort of industry thing. It's made to demonstrate to the jury the way that the murder happened. So we know in the trial the jury are invited down onto the floor of the court to sort of stand around and peer into this model. I think we're really used to like crime scene photographs, crime scene reconstructions, 3D models, and this is essentially what predates that. But it's made with offcuts at the work. So the wood is carriage wood, the glass in the windows is there, even the maquette, the seating fabric, is just offcuts of regular London South Western Railway maquette. And what's amazing about this object is just like the sheer level of almost unnecessary detail that's gone into it. So the windows work, and you think, okay, well, you know, there's a bit in the trial where he throws the gun out of the window, so maybe that was to demonstrate that. You've even got the little pull cords here. The door's open again, he flees from the door, she calls after him, so yeah, okay, I understand that. But there's even spaces here for carriage prints above the seats. There's a little luggage rack here. You've also got this on the outside, which is the emergency cord, which would have pulled and you could have rung to alert the driver that there was some sort of problem further down the train. He was meant to stop as soon as was humanly possible on the railways. The emergency cord's a regular feature of both crime novels and real crime on the Victorian railways and like complaint letters, because it does not work. Half the time it was made of rope and it just rotted away in bad weather. Other times people pulled it and whole sections of it came loose in their hands. But you also had to be quite tall. You had to stand, reach out of the window above your head and pull this cord, which is something that Mrs. King clearly does not even contemplate doing when she's got a madman with a gun in her face. The door, the fatal door that Parker emerges from to commit the murder, to the toilet section here, opens as well. So the dimensions of the compartment are accurate to scale, including the bathroom where Parker lurks with his gun before coming out to shoot Pearson. And the bathroom in here is complete with model toilet. There's even a tiny model towel on the towel rail inside as well. Even with a toilet compartment in trains, which was a relatively new feature in 1901. This was something that caused a lot of people anxiety because, as you can imagine, there's no disguising the fact that you're going to the toilet on this train, even in a busy compartment, and there could be up to 8, maybe even 12 passengers in this third-class compartment. So if someone went to the toilet, everybody in the carriage knew about it, especially when they opened the door afterwards. The other thing that you get with this model is a sense of just how close this compartment was. Like, once you see how close the seats are, you can understand how Mrs. King was injured in the gunshot that killed Pearson. They're so close, the dimensions of this. And that's really what fuels a lot of the excitement and anxiety about the trial, and anxiety about rail travel more generally in the 19th century. This idea of being trapped in carriages with people that you might never have met before, people who could be dangerous, with no means of exit until you get to the next station where the door is unlocked by the guard who's come to sort of take people's tickets. This was a regular anxiety for Victorian travellers, not just for potential mad murderers with guns, but because if you were here with a newspaper or a screaming baby, or you were smoking a pipe, you were a nuisance that you could not escape from in this tiny carriage. So, I mean, it's a good question, right? Why is there so much detail in this model? The answer is we don't really know. I mean, it's quite an open and shut case, so it's a bit of a mystery about why they needed this at the trial. But I suppose it's just to emphasise the closeness for people. But so much care has gone to us. It's clearly a little bit of a pet project of the apprentices at Eastleigh Works. So there you have it. That's the Murder Carriage. I think it speaks to stories about the anxieties of travellers in the Victorian age and now, but also like the exquisite craft work that went into building carriages like this. So if you like craftsmanship, or if, like me, you like a good horrible Victorian murder story, come and find it here in the National Railway Museum. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to hear more from the National Railway Museum, please like and subscribe.